Hi crochet friends. Today's video is a little different. I'm showing my face. Hey, how you doing? Today we are going to be making the highly requested Beatrix Bunny Lovey. This Lovey video was actually inspired by my popular sewing tutorial video for my other Loveys, and you guys asked so many times I couldn't say no anymore, so I put everything aside and we have our wonderful bunny. So by the end of this video and by the end of the sewing tutorial, you too will have a beautiful bunny lovey that you can then gift or give to your sweet babes for snuggles. Okay, because I'm sure there will be questions, I will list all of the details below in the description so that you can find all the yarn colors and everything else that you see in this video. In the actual tutorial, I will be using smoky quartz, but if you prefer the bolder opal, you can do that too. Scheepjes Stonewashed is my favorite yarn, so if you are wanting to get the same marbled stonewashed look, I highly suggest using this yarn, and I will list everything down below, how much you need for each project, and there will also be a PDF pattern available hopefully soon to go along with this if you would like that as well. So grab your yarn, your crochet hooks, and everything you need, and let's get started. Okay, let's get started on the head. And the head starts with a magic ring. So go ahead and get your magic ring on your hook. And then inside the magic ring, we're going to be placing 6 single crochet. And that is round 1. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Pull her closed. And then we're going to move on to round 2 before I place my stitch marker. And in round 2, it is a repeat of an increase. So each stitch around gets an increase, and that is 2 stitches, 2 singles in each stitch. 1 and into the same stitch for 2. And that is our repeat. 1 and 2. At the end of this round, you will have 12 single crochets around. Our last one. And I'm going to place our stitch marker. Don't mind the little cut in my thumbnail. My thumbnail saved my life last night while I was chopping some veg for dinner. Okay. Moving on to round 3. And in round 3 is a repeat. These are just standard repeats as we grow in size. So this is pretty standard here. Our repeat is 1 single and 1 increase. And we repeat that 6 times total. And at the end of this round, we will have 18 stitches around. And on our last repeat here, our increase should land in that last stitch where our marker is. Okay, so round 3, we have another repeat, and this is where we're going to stagger our increases so it doesn't make a stark hexagon shape, and instead it'll make a nice circle. So our repeat is 1 single, an increase, and then a single. And that's our repeat. So we're going to have 2 stitches between each increase. So single, increase, single. We're going to repeat that 6 times. And at the end of this round, we're going to have 24 stitches. And I'm coming up on my last repeat. And this time, our last stitch ends with a single crochet. And let's move up our marker. And we're on to round 5. And in round 5 is a repeat of 3 single crochets and then an increase. So 1, 2, 3, and increase. We're going to repeat that 6 times total. And at the end of this round, you should have 30 single crochets. Alrighty, I'm on my last repeat. And this time the last stitch will end with an increase. And let's move up our marker. Okay, now we are on to round 6, and round 6 is another repeat of 2 single crochets, then an increase, and then another 2 single crochets. So 1, 2, increase, and then 1, 2. We're going to repeat that 6 times in total, and at the end of this round you should have 36 single crochet. And I'm on my last repeat here. And this time your last stitch will end with 1 single crochet in our last marked stitch there. Let's move up our marker. Make sure you have 36 stitches around. And we're going to move on. And round 7 is a repeat of 5 single crochets and then an increase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and increase. We're going to repeat that 6 times total, and at the end of this round we will have 42 single crochet. And I'm on my last repeat here, and this time our increase will land in our last marked stitch. And let's move up our marker. And this is our last repeat round before we add some length. And this time our repeat is 3 single crochets and then an increase and then another 3 singles. So let's do 1, 2, 3, increase, 1, 2, and 3. There's our repeat. We're going to repeat that 6 times total, and at the end of this round you should have 48 stitches. And I'm on my last repeat here. And this time our last stitch will be, you guessed it, a single. Now let's move up our marker. And now we have some smooth sailing rounds. For the next 5 rounds, what is it? 9 through 13, yes. The next 5 rounds, we're just going to place 1 single crochet in each stitch around for 48 single crochets. So make sure you are counting your stitches, that you have the correct number, and move your stitch marker up at the end of each row. And I will meet you back here when we are ready for round 14. Okay, I'm coming up at the end of round 13, and I've done my 5 lengthening rounds. And we are ready for our little nose shaping. And so for round 14, we're going to place 22 single crochets. 1, 2, I won't count the whole way, I promise. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so count 22 singles. Here's 20, 21, and 22. Now the next 4 stitches get an increase. So we're gonna place 2 singles in each of the next 4 stitches. Yours should look like that. So we have 1 increase, 2, 3, and 4. And now we're going to place 22 singles to get back to the beginning of the round. So work a single in each stitch until we get to the end. And at the end of, this round, we should have 52 single crochets. Okay, 22 goes in the last stitch. And now for rounds 15 and 16, we're just going to place 1 single in each of those 52 stitches around. So for 2 rounds, we're just going to add some length here. And I will meet you back up here when we are ready for what round? 17. For round 17. Okay, coming up at the end of round 16 here. And now we are ready for our closing nose shape. Make sure you move up your marker. And round 17, we're going to place our 22 singles to get to the nose where we had our little increases there. So let's place 22 singles. What was that? 2. I can count. Okay, and 22. Now instead of increasing, we're going to decrease now. So we're going to kind of create like a little nose pucker here. So in the next 4 stitches, in the next 8 stitches, we're going to create decreases. So 1, I'm using the invisible decrease here. 2, 3, keep your tension nice and tight, and 4. Throwing my hook around. So as you can see, that just creates like a little shaping there. And now we're going to place 22 singles until we get back to our beginning stitch there. Make sure you go into the correct stitch. These 2 have been worked. So this one is our next one here for 22 singles. Okay, we are at the end of round 17, and now we are back to 48 stitches in the round. So make sure you have your 48 stitches, because for round 18 and 19, we just have some more lengthening rows. So we're going to put 1 single crochet in each stitch for 48 stitches. And don't forget to move your marker up at the end of your rounds so you can keep your place. And I will meet you back here when we are ready for round 20. Okay, I'm at the end of round 19. I'll move up my marker. And now we are ready to start closing our head. And I'm not going to stagger my stitches here because this is going to be on the underside. Nobody's going to see the bottom part of this bunny, so I don't need to stagger them. I'm lazy when I can be, and I feel like when you can mark your stitches in the round with the decreases, it's a little bit simpler. And I'll show you what I mean. Because round 20, we have a repeat of 6 single crochets and then a decrease. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then a decrease. And that's our repeat. We're going to repeat this 6 times total, and at the end of this round we're going to have 42 single crochets. And I'm on my last repeat. And 6. And our decrease is going to end in that marked stitch. And then round 21 is 5 single crochets and then a decrease. So as you see, we're going to end our rounds with all decreases now. And that's what I mean by not staggering our stitches, if you didn't understand. 4, 5, and then a decrease. We can always match up our ending stitch of our repeat with the repeat of, or excuse me, with the decrease of the repeat before. That was a lot of words. 2, 3, 4, 5, and decrease. Okay, repeat that around and I'll meet you back here for the next round. Alrighty, we're done with round 21. I'll move up our marker. And round, okay, here we go. Round 22 is a repeat of 4 single crochets and then a decrease. 2, 3, 4. And decrease. Repeat that 6 times total, and at the end of this round we should have 30 stitches. I don't think I gave you the stitch count on the one before. It should have been 36 stitches for round 21. Yeah. So continue with our repeat of 4 singles and then a decrease. And I'll meet you back up here for the next round. And let's move up our marker so that we can move on to our next round, which is 3 single crochet and then a decrease. We're just going to continue around until we have 6 stitches left, essentially. But after this round, we're going to stop and add some stuffing. So we have our 3 single crochets and then a decrease. Repeat that 6 times total. At the end of this round, you should have 24. Let's move up our marker and pull up a decent loop because now we're going to add our stuffing. I add little bits at a time until I have a decent amount in there, and then I'll start to shape it with the stuffing. And I'll continue to stuff and shape as I close. This is just to get that initial bunch of polyfill in there. So once I have a little bit in there, and I've shown this before in some of my other videos, but I feel like stuffing your Ami can really make or break how the finished product is. So I have a decent amount of stuffing in here. As you can see, it's like a stress ball at this point, but I'm going to go in there with my 2 fingers and I'm just going to kind of create this opening. I'm going to rotate it around and just pull. I'm doing like a scooping motion like this on the inside of the work and just kind of open up a center point where you can add stuffing to the center, because if you continue to add it to the sides and around, you're going to have a misshapen head. As you see, everything is kind of misshapen right now, but as I rotate and work around and create that little crevasse, if you will, I can take then more stuffing and add it to the center of our project and then continue to work around and create that shape. And as you see, I'm slowly starting to get a better head shape here. And as you see, our little nose is protruding here, and we want to be mindful of that because we want to make sure that we get lots of stuffing inside of that nose area so that we can see where our shaping is. Because if we overstuff the head without stuffing the nose at all, we're not going to see that protrusion. So continue to add, continue to make your little well in the center. Okay, I feel like that's good for now. Let's move on to our next closing round, and then we can continue to add more stuffing into the center of our project. Okay, so I think we're on round 24 of our project. And round 24 is 2 single crochets and then a decrease. We're going to continue that around. We repeat that 6 times in total. 1, 2, and decrease. Now, while we're holding our project like this, it can get really easy. It can become really easy to get loosey-goosey stitches. So make sure you're holding your tension, however you hold your yarn. Make sure you're holding your tension proper because we don't want any gaps in the bottom of our project here. And if you're just starting and you're having a hard time holding this, I promise it does get easier. Your hands start to become more comfortable with holding cumbersome objects. Okay, so let's repeat our decreases. 1, 2, and then a decrease. And as you can tell, if you hear my yarn kind of pulling and squeaking, that's because I have a really good, you can see my tension on my finger here. I've got a really good tension here. On my last repeat here, and that decrease ends in that marked stitch. Let's pull up our marker. And I'm going to pull up my working loop too, because I'm going to, again, add some more stuffing to the center of our project here. And this is going to get really small to get your fingers in there. If you can only get one in there, just work it around and create that well in the center of your work. And as you're going, make sure you can even take the end of your crochet hook here and just poke the nose and make sure we get lots of stuffing in that nose. As you can see, it's kind of protruding here and then it comes down. We want that. So I'm going to continue adding stuffing to the center. And with amigurumi, you want it stuffed firm, right? But you don't want it to start stretching the stitches. If we start stretching the stitches like that, it's overstuffed. And with time, those stitches will relax and open up, and you'll be able to see that polyfil through there. So we do not want that. We want a nice firm fabric, stuffed enough where it keeps its shape, but not overstuffed where we distend those stitches. Okay? Just a little bit more and then I'll move on. Okay, let's move on to our next closing round, which is 1 single crochet and then a decrease. Ooh, in our last round, you should have 18 stitches. And now we're going to go down to 12. So 1 single crochet and then a decrease is our repeat. At the end of this round, you will have 12. Be careful not to grab any of that polyfil. You can even put your finger there as a barrier to work so that you don't snag any unwanted fibers. Not that it's to be seen, because this will be covered up by our sewing, but, you know, perfectionist problems. And our last repeat. Ooh, I accidentally snagged my yarn there, of course, on one of the last rounds. Okay, so I'm going to pull up a loop because this is our last chance to add our stuffing. And I'm actually even going to remove my marker. If you're not confident enough to do this at this point, you can wait until the last round. But this might get in the way, so I'm just going to pull this out now, because as long as you continue around closing until you have 6 stitches, it won't be a problem. Even if you have 10 stitches and you close it, it's fine. Nobody's going to see this. So let's add our last little bit of stuffing here. I want to make sure that everything is firmly ready to go. Get my crochet hook in there and extend my nose one more time because we're overkill. Okay, and then on this last round, a little trick to get, you see how this is kind of flat here? Once we have our stuffing where we want it, we can go in and just take a little bit here and just push it through the edges. Hopefully this is coming up on camera. Work around and just bring our filling with our finger. I'm kind of like doing a hook motion, so I'm starting to shape the underneath now. And this might be a little overkill, but when I first started doing Amy, I didn't stuff properly, and I cannot remember who showed me this technique, but it was a total game changer. So I'm hoping that this will help you as well. If not, and you already knew this, well, hey, working together. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. When I push on it, it doesn't lose its shape, but yet it's not hard like a rock, and it doesn't stretch my stitches. So let's get our working loop back on our hook here, because we're going to place 6 decreases, and that should bring us down to 6 stitches in the round. So our repeat is just a decrease. Remember, you can put your finger there as a barrier between your hook and the fibers if you need. Obviously this hole is going to start getting too small for that, but when you start, that might be a good help. And everything is very tight with my tension right now. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches. I need to do one more. All right. I have this little tiny hole of 6 stitches, and I'm going to put my hook in the next stitch and just slip stitch to close. I'm going to yarn over and pull through. And then I'm going to leave a decent tail here because this is the yarn tail that we're going to use to sew to the blanket. And pull that through. Now this is what yours should look like. We have our little nose protrusion here. Everything is nicely shaped. And now normally we would close this at this point, but I'm going to leave this hole open so that we have a place for our embroidery to go in and out. And I will show you that in just a minute because we're going to move on to placing our eye indents and embroidery. All right, let's get started on the facial embroidery for our bunny here. And first, I want to talk about some of the materials that I use. My most asked questions are about this set of materials here when it comes to embroidery. And the actual thread that I'm using for embroidery is mercerized cotton. I am using the Katona line from Scheepjes. If you can't find this or if you don't have this available, any cotton thread will work. If it's mercerized, even better. Your size 10 crochet thread is perfect. These two I am using are the Katona line, and then this one here is just a basic size 10. Oh, hello. Size 10 crochet thread that I will be using for the black part of the eyes. I also have a strand of basic worsted or any strong fiber will do. This is what we will be using for the eye indents, and we're going to be pulling quite hard on this. So if you're used to stonewashed, it will not work because stonewashed does break under extreme pressure. So we want something that is acrylic, that is cotton, that will not break. So whatever you're comfortable with, this is just a basic weight for acrylic yarn here. So I have that as well as a size, oh, this is my 5-inch Susan Bates weaving needle. This is my favorite. This is my ride or die. If you've been following my channel for quite a while, you know that I have been I tout Susan like she is her own person. If I could use one tool for sewing for the rest of my life, it would be Miss Susan Bates here. If you would like, I have a link down below and you can find some of those for yourself. I also have some scissors here and a pair of pliers. Pliers are basically just used for when I can't get a good enough grip to pull the needle through the head without distending the stitches. I might not even use that, but if you do need a plier, make sure that you have them. My pliers are smooth on the inside so that we don't ruin our nice needles. Some pliers obviously have the texture so that it gets a better grip on what they're trying to grip, but for what I am using them for, I have a flat. I believe that these are for jewelry making. I also just started using a little bit of thread wax. You don't have to use this. This is just something that I have recently started using on my projects. And I'll show you obviously when we start embroidering, but it just helps glide the thread. I'm only using it on the black. It'll help guide the thread through the head without pulling much of the fiber fill through the stitches. And it also leaves a nice clean look when we're finished. Again, you don't have to use this. I'll leave a link below. I found this recently, like I said, and it's just kind of cool. So these are the tools that we are going to use in this next portion. So go ahead and grab what you need and let's get started. Okay, let's get started on the nose. If you're following the pattern says the nose gets embroidered between rounds 14 and 15 over the center 2 increase stitches. So let's get our pink thread, our pink yarn on our needle here. And we're going to turn our head upside down so that the nose is facing away from you. And let's find rounds 14 and 15 first. And now we're going to start at the very top of the head. This is obviously the center of our magic ring here. And we're going to count down our rounds. 1 is the first, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14, and 15. So in between rounds 14 and 15 is right there. But let's find those center 2 increase stitches. Here's an increase, here's an increase, and 4. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 increases. And our nose is going to be over the center 2. So that's technically 4 stitches, right? So let's find our 4 stitches here. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to place some pins there so that you can see where I am talking about. So here's the beginning of the increases, or I guess the increase stitch that we're going to be working through, and there's the end. So that's 4 stitches we're wrapping our nose around. And in order to do that, excuse them. In order to do that, I am going to insert Susan through the bottom of the head and out through one of those stitches. Trying to get a clean exit point there. Hopefully you can see that. And I'm going to pull that through and leave myself a little bit of a tail for sewing later, or excuse me, for tying off later. Now we're going to find our other marked stitch. You can even turn it around, however works best for you. And we're going to place our needle through that stitch and come back out the previous one. So we're just going to do a couple wraps around these 4 stitches. And I like to see where my stitch will lay before I fully commit. I might do 3 or 4 passes, not sure yet. We're going to see how it looks. You can also pull tightly on this bottom one as you work, so again, no loosey-gooseys. Just going to fiddle around, see where is best for this to go. And you can always, once you find your proper placement as you're working it like this, you can hold your thumb there as you insert your needle in. I know this is precarious to do on camera. You can hold your thumb there so that it holds its spot right where you wanted it to go. Fiddle around, play with it. When you do use these cotton threads, you can see the stitches more clearly. So it does take a little bit of finesse and fine-tuning, but practice makes perfect, right? It's cliche, but it is true. Okay, I'm liking the way this is looking. I think I'm going to just do one more pass across. And then when I insert this, I'm going to do like a little line for a little nose detail here. I'm going to go down 3 rounds. So I'm going to find 1, 2, 3, and at the bottom of those decrease rounds, I'm going to try to find that center placement between the nose. So as you can see, I kind of want to come out right around this area. So I'm going to do my best to get right there in the center. Excuse me. And pull this tight, right where you want it. You can even get your needle in there and make sure everything is nice and even with tension. So now I have my middle placement. Is that in the middle? Kind of not though, is it? Let's just, because perfectionist problems, let's just see if I can get it a little more centered. Is that even in frame? Let's see what we can do here. Move that over just the littlest bit. See how just the tiniest movement can change everything. And I'm going to go in here and I'm going to lift up these stitches a little bit with my needle because I'm going to try to find that center stitch and place my Susan and then come out the bottom hole and pull tight. Now we can take our needle again, our sewing needle, and just kind of zhuzh and make that less tight there. And then we can tie this off on the bottom. Just going to snip the excess real quick. Tie this off on the bottom and secure it, and then bury those ends inside of the head. Never to be seen again. Okay, now we're going to just bury those tails in the head. Whoops. and then snip the excess. Alrighty, now let's move on to the eye indents. Okay, I have my worsted basic acrylic yarn here, and I'm threading it on my needle. I'm going to double up for this one, meaning it's going to have 2 strands, which is why I have a decent length here, because this is where we are going to start shaping the face for our sweet little bunny. And this just adds a little bit of character here for our eyes, and I love. Okay, now in order to do this, we are again going to be working through the bottom hole here. And I have a video of this on my Pebbles crochet along, but I'm glad to do this again because this is probably one of my favorite tricks to shaping faces for amigurumi. Okay, so in the pattern, it says the eye indents are created over rounds 13, 6 stitches away from the nose on either side of the face, okay? And then the eyes are done over rounds 12 through 14. So we need to find round 13, which, if you remember, this is round 14 and this is round 15. So if this is round 14, 13 is clearly this one here. And if you would like to double check, you can just count down again. So let's just do that for the sake of the video. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Now here is the nose, right? And it says 6 stitches on either side of the nose is where our eye indents are going to be placed. So I'm going to count over 6 stitches. So that's 1, which is where our increase is, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. But remember, that is between rounds 14 and 15. So this is round 14, and this is 13. Okay, this is round 13 right there. So I'm going to place a pin so that I know exactly what stitch I'm going to be doing my eye indent over. Okay, so let's do that just for the sake of the video, in case we've never done this before. Okay, we're going to count over 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and then go up to round 13 and mark that stitch. Now we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Okay, let's count over 6 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And let's go up to round 13 and place a pin. Let's move it out of the way there. Sorry, noisy. And let's just double check that they are both on round 13. And follow that over. And they are both 6 stitches away from the nose. Now look at this. See how that's off here? I want it to be more uniform because when we work in a round, obviously things are slightly skewed and one side will be closer than the other, even though we are technically 6 stitches away on either side. Let's just double check that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, move it up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, move it up. So in order to make that even, I'm actually going to move this one over just 1 stitch and see how that looks, which is much better in my opinion. So the 6 stitches are approximate. Make sure that you are finding what works best on your project of where you want to add your eye indents. Okay, so I know that it looks creepy with the pins here, but let's change that. Okay, so again, I'm going to go through the bottom of the head and I'm going to find that stitch that I just marked. I know it can be confusing because we're 7 away on this side and 6 away on this side, but trust the process, right? I'm going to go around that stitch there. When I say around, I mean I'm going to come out the top, go back through the bottom, and when I pull that tight, that yarn is going to wrap around that stitch. We'll go over to the next side and wrap around this stitch here. So here's the top, excuse me, here's the bottom of the stitch. I'm going to go through the top of it and then come out the bottom of the head and pull. Okay, so now I have my eye indent placement. I'm going to remove my pins because this is where we are going to pull and make the eye indents show themselves. Okay, I'm just going to remove that yarn, that Susan, from my yarn there. And now I have these two ends coming out of the bottom of the head. I'm going to find either side, and then I'm just going to give her a tug and pull on that and watch that face come to life there. Look at how cute, as I shake her. Okay, this is why I double it up, because I'm going to really pull tight here. Don't be afraid to give her a nice pull there. I mean, we don't want it so tight that it distorts the shape where we can't tell that it's a bunny. We don't want any alien bunnies. I mean, unless that's what you want, then, you know, you do you, boo-boo. But let's pull tight and then, sorry, shaking my camera, tie that off. See how like I have like no shame in just tugging on that. And because we have established we are overkill, I'm just gonna give her one more pull with another knot. And then look at that. Look at that. So again, we are going to hide these ends in the bottom of the head and then snip the excess. Okay, moving on to the actual embroidery. We are going to get some of our black thread here, way more than you think you need. Again, excess in all things. We are just going to snip off a decent amount here. And now this is where this little wax contraption comes in. Again, you can skip this step if you happen to have one. Go ahead and use it. If I am using this wrong, if you are well versed in this and I am doing it wrong, please tell me, because I would love to know. So I'm going to hold it here. There's these little bars that you can work between on each side. I'm just going to go, as you can tell that I've been quite liberal with this as I've been learning how to use it. I'm just going to do a pass and pull it through all the way. Oops, little snag. All the way through. And that's just going to help have our thread glide, and it also apparently, supposedly, adds some strength to our strands here. So, fun little trick. Now we're going to thread our Susan here, and again, I'm going to double up on this one because this is a size 10 thread. It is a little bit thinner, so I'm going to have this doubled, which is again why I had such an excess length there. So as you can see, here is the length I am using. It's hard to get all in one frame here. Okay, so we have our Susan threaded and our head. Now, we went with our eye indents over round 13, correct? So in there, there's round 13. You can't see that yarn anymore, which is kind of cool, but 13. So that means that this is 12 and this is 14, which lines up with our nose here being in between rounds 14 and 15. So we are going to be embroidering over those 3 rounds where that 13th round is the center of our eye. Okay, let's get started over here. And again, we're going to go in through our entry point, which is the bottom of the head. And I'm going to go to the stitch above where our eye indent is. I can use my scissors here to point that out. Here's our eye indent, the stitch above, and then here's the stitch below. You can see it's just kind of a straight line there. And I'm going to pull that through and leave myself again just a little bit of a tail here at the bottom to tie off. And as you see, that really, really helped glide through with pulling minimal polyfill through those stitches. Ugh. Just take a minute for that. Oops. Okay, so get back over there, you little bugger. I'm going to turn my head sideways. I'm going to find that same stitch, 3 stitches, 3 rows down. I'm going to kind of like push and angle. This is why I love Susan. You can really get a, relax. You can really get a good grip on her. So angle her up and down, push her through, hold your thread to the side so that we don't grab that either. Pardon my unmanicured fingers. Been house cleaning. As you can see, I've got those 3 rounds there, and just pull through. Make sure everything is staying where it needs to stay in its own place. Use your thumb or your needle to help guide that through. And now we have our first pass, nice and clean. If you grabbed any polyfill, go ahead and get that out of the way. Sometimes I use little tweezers if it's really annoying. But since I've started using the wax, it's been less and less. Okay, so we are going to repeat that process. I'm going to move the top strand out of the way so that I can pull through the next pass. And now this is a trick that I try to really hit home with. A lot of people make the mistake of going over their pass, meaning they create the same pass over the same stitch over and over and over again, so they get like this bulbous, misshapen eye. My favorite trick is to remember you got to go around the outside. Okay, so when you pull it and you're going through your stitches, make sure that you're going around the outside of the last one that you did. So you're creating length outward instead of this way outward. So you're creating width, let's say, if I didn't just say that. You're creating width instead of height to the eye. Okay, so let's go around the outside because we are the real Slim Shady. Okay. Use your needle to even things out. To go around the outside. Pick off any polyfill. Get that sucker out of there and repeat the process. And now I don't have a set number of how many repetitions or how many passes I do. It's just, you know, I embroider with my heart. So however I want that bunny to be, that's how that bunny is going to be. It's a very rare occasion that I get 2 identical eyes, but you know what? We strive. We strive for that perfection. Get out of there. Okay. I'm going to continue going around the outside. Around the outside. Around the outside. Okay, and now that I have the shape that I am going for, the size of the eye, as you see, it's not too bulbous, but it does have a nice rounded shape. And this is going to be my last pass because I'm going to move over to this other eye and repeat the process. So I'm going to go through the bottom, and then I'm going to go find the top. Let's use our scissors again. Here's that eye indented stitch. I'm going to go into the top of that one, if I did not yell the word top just now. Sometimes my microphone picks up weird emphases, emphases, emphases. If this is your first time watching a video with me, just know that I am not always such a dork. Okay, maybe I am. It's fine. All right, make sure that you pull everything nice and tight. Get any of those little fibers that get it in there. Say no, sir. And now we are set up to repeat the process. Okay, so here we go. We have our top, our indent, and then our next stitch. Now we can go into either one here, but because we're working it around, remember everything is going to be shifted slightly this way, right? So we want to make sure that our eye is at the same curvature as this one. So this one faces the nose a little bit at a slight angle. You see that? We want to follow that same angle on this side. So we're actually going to follow the inside stitch there. Okay, so make sure you're not going, let's see if we can find an example. We don't want to go outward like this where the eye is shaped that way. We want to go towards the face. Okay, so find the stitch that leans toward the face. So that we can have the same angle. And I'm going, remember, I'm using my long needle to kind of scoop those 3 rounds and pulling tight. And as you can see there, that kind of gives the same angle and the same effect on both sides. We always have to account that in the round, the one side will be slightly skewed because that's just how crochet works. If you're right-handed, it'll go off to the right. If you're left-handed, it'll go off to the left. Fun facts you probably already knew. Okay, so we're remembering to go around the outside. Around the outside. Around the outside. Okay, we are doing our best to match size and shape, and I'm pretty much, I think I'm there. Now I'm going to create our little eyelid, and you can do this by coming out the top of this same eye here, but I'm going to come out, I don't know why I like to do it this way. I'm going to come out the top of this one. Still remembering to go around the outside. And now I'm just going to be a little unconventional here, and I'm going to snip. I usually have 2 Susans, but I don't have another one right here. I'm going to snip my yarn here and just let that hang, and we'll come back to that. And grab your white yarn and grab yourself a decent amount, because this is where we're going to add the eyelid, excuse me, the whites of the eyes and the little reflective mark inside the actual eye itself. Let me see here. So we're going to create this little area here and then our little reflective mark. Okay, and again, we are going through the bottom of our head. I'm just using a single strand on this one. I'm going to go through the bottom, and I'm going to come out the top here, move this aside, come out the top of the stitch that all that is coming out of, the top of the eye there. I'm going to pull that through, leaving myself some to tie off at the end. And in the same fashion, I'm going to go around the outside twice. I'm going to make 2 passes. Bring this way. I'm going to make 2 passes here. So here's one. Oops, sorry. And I'm remembering to stay on the outside of that thread. So meaning that the thread is over here, I'm going to stay on that side of it. Because when we pull that tight, I'm just covering it. So you pull that tight, I'm going to go around the outside. That thread is coming out where we want it to on this side instead of this side of the thread. Because if we came out on this side of the thread, it would be a little twisty, and we're aiming for perfection. I mean, I'm aiming for perfection because I can't. Okay, Okay, and on our second pass, we're going to go to the other eye and come out the top of that stitch in the same fashion that we did as before. And as we have our placement go through, we're going to guide our yarn to the outside so that we have a nice clean line there. And then we're going to repeat the process on this side of the face, keeping the yarn over here so that when I exit the eye, excuse me, the top of the eye, I have the yarn in the right placement for our second swipe. Because that's going to go, remember, around the outside. And then when we go through our second swipe, we're going to go out through the other eye again to add that little reflective detail. And now you can do it on the same eye, but trying to get your needle, just even with the longer one, trying to get your needle to scoop up and under to get the proper placement with a clean stitch is very hard. So I'm going to go in the bottom of our stitch here. And when I come out, I'm going to find the middle, the exact middle of our black embroidery there. I'm just going to pop my needle through the center of what we just embroidered. And remember, we're still guiding our placement here around the outside. Okay, so this is what yours should look like. Now to add the reflective mark, I'm coming out the middle. I'm just going to go through the top here. And then out through the middle of this eye. It'll take you a couple times to find it. This is again why I love the longer needle. There we go. Oh, and I think this is where I actually need my pliers. Makes everything so much easier. Now this one, make sure you are guiding this in because this can get twisted, and if you pull too tight, this will get lost. So just guide her in nice and easy. Okay, we're going to do the same thing on the other eye, and this time we're going out through the bottom of the head. But we're going to remember to guide her in how we want her. As even as possible. I mean, nothing in life is symmetrical, right? But other than my perfectionism. Okay, so I've snipped that yarn, and now we're going to tie it off in the same fashion as we did the other excess tails here. So just tie them off. Make sure you're not pulling too tight on this one so that that reflective bit doesn't get lost inside of our embroidery. And now I'm just going to hide these tails inside the end and snip the excess. And now we are left with our black thread here so that we can create our little eyelid. So I'm going to put that back on our needle here. And this is very simple, okay? The eyelid, I like to count over 1, 2 stitches from the top. So here's 1 and 2, and then I go all the way down to where the eyelid is coming, or excuse me, the eyeball is coming out. Now, the closer you go like this, the droopier the eyelid is going to be. So on this one, I know I just said 2, but I might do 3. Let's see. Here's 1, that's 2. I did 3. No, you know what? I'm going to stick with 2. Trust your gut. Okay, so I'm going to go 1 and 2, follow that down, which is again 1, 2 away from the bottom. And when I come back out, I'm going to go out the top of this eye, on this side of that white stitch so that we don't see any when we pull that through. And remember, we're still guiding our embroidery here, and pull that kind of tight. And we're going to repeat the process on this side. So we're going to go 1, 2, but remember this side is different. We always have to shift to make it even to the other side. So this one's actually going to be 3. So in the third from the eye, I'm going to go here and go out the bottom, and then guide that in and pull tight. See how that's poking out the top there? I do not like. Me no likey. So just use your tools. Zhuzh around. Zhuzh is the word of the day. And then just pull tight. And then we can tie off on the bottom of the head here. This kind of got pulled short while I was working, but that's okay. I'm going to tie this off on the bottom. And this is where I will probably overkill and do 3 knots. And then we're going to hide those ends inside of the head. And then we can close up the bottom of the head here so that we are prepared for our sewing. Okay, snip those. All right, let's close this hole here. Grab your hook. And to close, we are just going to weave our needle through the front loop only of the remaining 6 stitches. You can do this with a yarn needle. I just combined darning and yarn. It's a yarning needle. And you can do the same thing if you prefer, just through the front loops only, and then when you get around to the beginning, just give her a slight tug to close. And now this tail here is what we will be using to sew our Lovey to the blanket. So don't get rid of this yarn tail just yet. Look at that sweet little bun face. All right, now we're going to make the arms. They're pretty straightforward. I start with a magic ring. And inside our magic ring, we're going to place 6 single crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Pull to close. And now we are on to round 2, which is an increase times 6. So there's going to be an increase in each one of those stitches we just made. 1 and 2. Repeat that around. If you need to, make sure you put in your stitch marker. I'm going to add mine after this round here. I live on the dark side, the rebel side. I don't really ever use a stitch marker unless I'm filming, so sometimes I forget. Okay, so now we have 12 single crochets. I'm going to pull up my loop, and I'm going to use a running stitch marker again. Clumsily to mark my stitch there. And then rounds 3 and 4 are very simple. They're just a single crochet in each stitch around for 12 stitches. So I will meet you back here at the end of round 4. Make sure you move your stitch marker up at the end of each round. All right, we are at the end of round 4. And the next round, round 5, oh, come here, little bugger. Oh, too soon. Oh my word. There we go. Round 5 is where we're going to add our little thumb detail, this little bobble stitch. But first we need to place 11, my goodness, I'm all thumbs right now, 11 single crochet. So place our 11, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then 11, the last stitch here, where am I? The last stitch here is where we're going to place our bobble. Make sure you keep your tension nice and tight here. We don't want any loosey-goosey stitches that can be pulled on. So our bobble is 5 half complete doubles. So there's 1, 2, 3. We have 4 loops on our hook. 4. This last one can be really tight, but make sure you keep your tension. And 5. You should have 6 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all of them. Now I'm just going to kind of just poke this out a little bit. Traditionally, bobbles are shown on the wrong side because they like to poke out the wrong side. But for the sake of our Amy, we're going to use it on the front side. So let's put a single crochet here in the next one. And as you see, it's going to kind of pucker inward. We don't want that. So take your crochet hook, take your thumbs, take whatever you need, polyfil poker, the end of your hook, and just poke it out. And pull tight. And that should, theoretically, pop your little thumb bobble out. And now we've already placed our first single crochet in the round. This bobble stitch now marks our last stitch. So I'm just going to work 11 more stitches in the round, and then the 11th stitch should end in the top of that bobble. Sorry if you can hear all of the wind chimes outside. It's rather blustery today. Okay. And that last stitch will be in the top of your bobble. I'm going to move up my stitch marker. I know I didn't put it in the last round, but for the sake of ease in the video and such, the bobble will show us where it is. Okay, so now the rest of the arm is just lengthening rows where we just continue to single crochet. We go up to round 21. So I believe, what row are we on? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So from row 7 to 21, we're going to just place 1 single crochet in each stitch. Make sure you get that next stitch next to the bobble. Don't skip that one. Count your stitches at the end of each row. Make sure you have 12 stitches and move your stitch marker up so that you can keep track of how many rows you are doing. And then I will meet you back here at the end of round 21. Okay, we are at the end of round 21 and our last stitch meets up with that bobble. If you follow it all the way up, we're in that last stitch. And that's important because we kind of want to be in the middle of the arm. And by the middle, I mean here's the thumb, here's the back of the arm. If we go up, we're kind of right in the middle there. And I'll show you why here after we stuff our little arm. So let's get our polyfill and add some stuffing. Come on. Also make sure that you are stuffing your arms evenly. We don't want one to be like Popeye and the other one to be super scrawny. And I'm just using the tail end of my hook here. Give it a zhuzh. And I'm just making sure that they are stuffed equally. I'm leaving these last, oh, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like the last 7 or 8 rows unstuffed, just because this part is going to be sewn to the bottom of the head. Okay, so if yours does not look like this, and let's say your ending stitch is over here or over here, just add a couple more so that you're right there in the middle. It does not have to be perfect. Because now we are going to close the arm here. So into the next stitch and into the last stitch. Get your hook in there if you can. A little fiddly. At the same time though, this isn't too important. If you only have 5 stitches instead of 6, we're placing 6 stitches across here to close. So through each side, both stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for the sake of the video, we're not perfect. I'm just going to end it there. I'm going to give myself some yarn for sewing and break my tail there and pull it through. You don't have to give as much as I gave for sewing, but you do need quite a long tail for sewing. How many different ways can I say that? Okay, so we have our 2 arms made, and we will continue on. Okay, we are going to make our ears. Here's the first one. There's obviously 2 of them. And it, again, starts with a magic ring. So let's get that on our hook. And in that first ring there, we're going to place 6 single crochet like normal. And 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Pull her tight. And now in this next round, I'm going to wait to put in my stitch marker just because it's going to get fiddly here because we're only placing 6 stitches around. So for round 2, it's just 1 single in each stitch. And now this is going to pucker the wrong way. And we're going to want in the next couple rounds to make sure that we push it the right way. In fact, I'm going to try to do that now. So if yours looks like mine and it's creating like this little bowl here, don't fret. Don't worry, my friend, because we're just going to make it do what we want. And push it the right side out. These first couple rounds are always the fiddliest bit. Give her a twist in your fingers. That tends to help me sometimes. Get her facing the right direction. And I'm actually going to put my little stitch marker now. So that we can see where our round is. So we are on round 3 now. Let's get everything all situated in the right way. There we go. And round 3 is a repeat of 1 single crochet and then 1 increase. So single crochet in the next, and then increase. These first couple rows. Ugh. And repeat that twice more. At the end of this round, we're going to have 9 stitches. And last one. Last stitch is an increase. And let's move our marker up. Stonewash likes to grab all of the fiber friends and cling on tight. If you've used Stonewash before, you know what I mean. Okay. Now round 3 is a lengthening row, so we're just going to place 1 single crochet in each of the 9 stitches. Make sure you're counting your stitches as you go, so that we have the correct math before we move on to each round. It was 6, 7, 8, and 9. Move up our marker. And then we're going to move on to the next round, which is another repeat. And the repeat is 2 single crochets and then an increase. And we're going to repeat that 3 times. So 1, 2, and increase. Repeat that twice more. And at the end of this round, you should have 12 single crochet around. One more repeat. And an increase in that last stitch. Move up our marker. Come here. You have to talk to her. Tell her she's doing a good job. I tell you guys that all the time, but if you tell your project she's pretty, she listens. Kind of like me. Okay. Let's see, where are we at? We are on round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so round 6 is a lengthening row again. So we're going to just place 12 single crochet in each stitch around. And make sure you move up your marker at the end of this row. We're at the end of our 12 single crochet around, moving up our marker. And we're moving on to the next round, which is a repeat of 3 single crochet and then an increase. So 1, 2, 3, and increase. Repeat that twice more. At the end of this round, we will have 15 single crochet. And that increase lands in that last stitch. We're going to move up our marker. And, oops. Our next round is another repeat. And it is 2 single crochets, then an increase, and another 2 single crochets. So repeat of 1, 2, increase, 1, 2. Repeat that twice more. And this, we're just staggering our increases so they're not noticeable. And we're going to end our row this time, round row, with 2 singles. And then we're going to move up our marker. And then our next round is another repeat, and that is 5 single crochets and then an increase. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and an increase. Twice more. At the end of this round, you will have 21 single crochet. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in our last stitch, our increase. Move her on up. Because the next few rounds are smooth sailing, they're lengthening rows. Rounds 10 through 17 are just 1 single crochet in each stitch around for 21 stitches. So make sure you're moving up your marker at the end of each round. You have the correct stitch count, and I will meet you back here when we have finished with round 17. All right, we are in the last stitch of round 17. Moving up our marker, and we are not stuffing the ears, so we can just go straight into the decreasing and closing rounds. And round 18 is a repeat, and the repeat is 5 single crochets and then a decrease. And we repeat that 3 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, using my invisible decrease, front loop, single crochet them together, and repeat that twice more. At the end of this round, you should have 18 stitches around. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. Should have 2 stitches left in the round where we are going to decrease. Move up your marker if you need to. I've got just the wee widow's tail there. It'll work. What round was that? That was 18. Now round 19 is another repeat, and this is decrease and then a single. So we put our decrease first. Decrease, single. At the end of this round, you should have 12 stitches. And repeat. Whoops. And on our last repeat here, and the last stitch gets our single. Now that's the last stitch we're working in the round. We're going to close by working through both sides of the round here. So find your next stitch, which is that first decrease we made, and then get your hook, swivel it backwards, and get my camera to focus, and poke it through. And then we single crochet them together. And that's our first of 5 that we are going to make. So grab your next 2 corresponding stitches and single crochet them together 4 more times. And this last one, sometimes people tell me they have a hard time identifying it. It's basically we're working through this one bar. And that technically is us working through those 2 stitches. I know it's confusing, but it makes it works. It works. Oops, I did not mean to chain one there. Don't chain one. We just have our 6 single crochet across. Now we're going to turn. So we have our wrong side of our last row facing toward us. I'm gonna get rid of my stitch marker there because it's no longer needed. Okay, with the wrong side facing us, we're going to fold this over so that we have our first stitch of our last row and our last stitch. So again, we're going to be working through that first, come here a little booger, our first, and then angle your hook backward, very fiddly, clumsily, and get it in there, because we're going to single crochet. And this time we're putting 3 across to secure that fold. So again, that last one, it's just kind of working through that bar for 3. And as you see, that has secured our cute little fold here. So now I am going to chain 1 and pull it through. Give yourself a decent tail for sewing. Okay, so now we have our 2 ears. And we can move on to the next step. Let's get started on the carrot. And we start with a magic ring. Get your magic ring on your hook there. And per usual, we are going to put our 6 singles inside the magic ring. 4, 5, 6. And then pull to close. Pull on her last thread there. And we are ready for round 2. And I'm not going to add my stitch marker until we figure that out. So round 2, we have 1 single crochet in each stitch. And now these first couple rounds can be a little fiddly because they can pucker and turn the wrong way, but we will make sure it does what we want. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. See how mine is puckering the wrong way? That's the wrong side of the work. Sorry if you just heard me scratch my head. Oh, that's the wrong side of the work. Here's the right side, and we want to get that facing the right direction. So let's grab this and push. These, like I said, these first couple rounds are always just a pain in the tuchus. But when you get it like this, if you put it between your fingers and you roll it a little bit and you zhuzh it, it usually falls into place and it relaxes those stitches a little bit. See? And now we have it perfectly positioned for round 3. And for the sake of the video, I'm going to add a stitch marker here. Okay, moving on to round 3. Round 3, we have a repeat. And our repeat is 2 single crochets and then an increase. We only repeat that twice. So 1, 2, increase. And that's our repeat. One more time. At the end of this round, we'll have 8 stitches. Let's move up our stitch marker. And on to round 4. And round 4 is just a lengthening row where we're going to put 1 single crochet in each of those 8 stitches. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 is in that last stitch with our marker. Then we're going to move around up because we are ready. Get over here, you little guy. There we go. We're ready for round 5. And round 5 is another repeat. It is 3 single crochets and then an increase. And we're only repeating that twice. 1, 2, 3, and increase. One more time. Move up our marker. And now we're ready for round 6. And round 6 is a lengthening row. And we're going to place 1 single crochet in each of those 10 stitches. Our 10th stitch goes into that stitch with our marker. And now I'm just going to take this little starting tail here and just put her down in there so she's out of the way and causing less mayhem. Okay, where are we? Now we are ready for round 7. And round 7 is a repeat row. Our repeat is 4 single crochets and then an increase. Ooh, look at, I put my stitch marker in the wrong stitch. I have 1 more to go to finish that increase. See what I did there? Just gonna bring that on up. That's why I love a running stitch marker. You can always tell where you are. Now we are properly placed. So now we can move on to our repeat, which is 4 single crochets and then an increase. 1, 2, 3, 4, and increase. 1, 2, 3, 4, and increase. At the end of this round, we should have 12 stitches. So make sure your count is correct. And we'll move up our stitch marker because the next round is just 1 single crochet in each stitch. So we're just adding some length here. And that'll be 12 stitches around. Okay, and our last stitch goes in our marked single there. And let's move up our stitch marker. And for round 9, we have a repeat of 5 single crochet and then an increase. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and increase. Repeat that one more time. At the end of this round, we will have 14 stitches. Move up our marker. And now we're going to place one single in each stitch for a lengthening row. Remember, there's 14 stitches here. Alrighty. Moving on. We are what round are we on? Round 11. And round 11 we have another repeat, which is 6 single crochets and then an increase. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and increase. Repeat that once more. At the end of this round, we will have 16 stitches. Our increase in our last marked stitch there. And move up our trusty friend. And now we have another lengthening row. So for 16 stitches, we're going to place one single crochet. Alrighty. We are moving up our marker and we're ready for round 13. And round 13 is another repeat, which is 7 single crochets and then an increase. And we repeat that twice. Seven and increase. Once more. Our last stitch is marked. We'll place our increase and move up our marker. Where we are ready for rounds 14 through 16. Now these are all lengthening rows, so we're just going to place one single crochet for 3 rounds for 18 stitches. So 18 stitches around, 3 rounds. Move your stitch marker up at the end of each round. Get back on there. Thank you. And then I will meet you back up here when we are ready for round 17. Alrighty, I am done with round 16. My 3 rounds worked there. I'm going to move up my marker. And I am ready for round 17, theoretically. Okay, now I'm ready for round 17. And round 17 is a closing round. We're going to have a repeat of 1 single crochet and then 1 decrease. And we're going to repeat that 6 times. At the end of this round, we're going to have 12 stitches. And we're going to add some stuffing. All right, when we get to the last stitch here, we are going to be changing colors. So I'm on my last stitch, and it happens to be a decrease, but I also need to switch colors to my leaf color. Okay, so we have our last decrease. Now I'm going to complete it with my green. And that finishes off that stitch for me. Now in the next few, the next round, we're going to be decreasing again. So I'm going to place one more decrease to secure our color join, and then we can add our stuffing. So decrease over the next 2 stitches with our new color. And let's pull up a loop, and I'm actually going to remove my stitch marker now because that color change signifies where my round ends and begins. Now I'm going to break my orange yarn. And I'm also going to tie together these ends on the inside of the work where we changed our color here so that none of these stitches come undone. Because we are theoretically making this for a baby. Baby's hands get on all sorts of little things, and we got to make sure that nothing will come undone. If you're overkill like I am, put a third knot in there. And then shove those ends to the inside so they are never to be seen again. Okay, now we're going to add some of our stuffing. And use your finger or your crochet hook. And don't be afraid to stuff this quite firm. You want it to keep its shape. So continue to stuff until you can't stuff anymore. Okay, I can no longer stuff it here. So we are going to continue closing. Get the loop back up on your hook, and we are going to place 5 more decreases. There's 1. And 2. 3. 4. And our last one. There. Okay, so now we're going to start making the little frond leaves. And we're going to start by chaining 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We're going to turn it over because we're going to be working in the back humps here. And in the second chain from the hook, this could be a little fiddly, we're going to slip stitch. And then we're going to slip stitch in each of the next stitches until we reach the bottom here. So there should be 6 slip stitches as we work down. That was 3, 4, 5, and our last hump is just there. Come here, my friend. Work with me. Okay, there we go. Just there. And this is what yours should look like. Now we're going to go into that next stitch, that first stitch here that we made, and slip stitch. We have our first little carrot leaf made. Now we're going to repeat that process. We're going to chain 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Starting in the second chain from the hook, we're going to place 1 slip stitch in each of the back humps for 6 slip stitches. And then when you get to the bottom, we'll slip stitch into the next stitch. Don't forget that last guy. Was I even in frame? We'll see. And then into the next stitch, we slip stitch. Okay, repeat that all the way around. You should have, how many are we going to have? 1, 2, we should have 6 theoretically. So continue on. I've just placed my last slip stitch in my chain there. And my very last slip stitch is going to go into the last single crochet of the round, which is right next to our first leaf, carrot leaf that we made. We're just going to slip stitch. Now, as you see, we have a little bit of an opening here. And that's okay, because we're just going to go right across from our friend here. Just put it in. It doesn't matter where. Actually, I think I'm going to go over. It does matter. Let's go 3 and 3. So we have 3 on each side. You see that there? And then I'm just going to slip stitch that closed. and yarn over and pull through to close that. Break my yarn and let go, please. Thank you. And pull that through. And now we can bury that yarn tail down in the center there. And we have a cute carrot ready for dangling. Okay, we're going to get started on the blanket. And this is just a standard granny square. There are dozens of ways to do this. If you are comfortable with your own way and you would like to just move on, go ahead. This is the way that I've been doing it for the last few years through adapting other people's techniques and what I find makes a better finished result. So we're going to put a slip knot on our hook. You can use whatever colors here you like. You can stripe your blanket. You can make one solid color. You can do however you want. Just for the sake of the video, I'm making like a little metaphorical tummy using the white, and I will be using the smoky quartz as a border for our belly. This is not white, this is moonstone. Okay, so we have our slip knot on our hook, and we're going to start with a chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. In that third chain from the hook, the very first one that we made, we are going to slip stitch and make a ring. Now this can get a little fiddly. If you find that you are having a hard time finding the center of your ring, you can make a chain 4 here and it will be a little easier for you. So now we're going to insert our hook, theoretically, into the center. If you need to give it a tug to find the center, get your hook in the center there. And now we're going to single crochet. Most of the time it starts with a chain 3, but I am a product of Rachel from Cypress Textiles, so we do a single crochet and a chain 1 for our very first double crochet. She calls that a beginning double, but single crochet and a chain 1. So now we need to add 2 more chains because that's going to count as our first DC, or double crochet, and then the chain 2 is our corner. So we're making our first DC and our first corner. Now we're going to yarn over and go back into the ring, and we're going to place 3 double crochets. This is what it should look like. We have a single, 3 chains, and 3 doubles. Now we're going to make our second corner and chain 2. And now we're going to go back into the center of this ring for another 3 double crochets. Everything gets worked into that center ring there. So if you're having a hard time, like I said, getting everything in there, go ahead and change that out for a chain 4 at the beginning. Okay, so now we have our first corner, a side, second corner, another side. We're going to make our third corner with a chain 2. And now we're putting another 3 DC in the center for our next side of our square. So we started our first side, second, third, fourth. I know that might be confusing, especially if you are used to doing granny squares other ways. Now we're going to chain 2 for our next corner. And now we already have our first DC here on our last side, so we only need to place 2 more DCs in that center to finish off our last side, which is technically our first side. Now we're going to find that chain 1 that we made after our single. We're going to find that chain 1, and we're going to go through the chain 1 and the space and slip stitch to join. And we have created round 1. And now we can move on to round 2. And round 2, we're going to work into this next stitch for our first DC, which is our single crochet and our chain 1. Now we're going to turn our work because we're going to be working around this way. Some people continue on and will just continue around and around and around on the same side. I like to flip my work because it will create a more even square when we're finished. Sometimes, just because the way crochet works is when you're working around, your stitches can become a little bit sideways and it won't create a true square. So if you've ever crocheted a granny square and you're finding it comes out a little wonky, try turning after each round. That way there will be no right or wrong side. Everything will look the same from frontsies and backsies. So round 2, we have our first DC made there. We're going to turn our work. And I'm going to chain 1 more because that's going to be the chain 1 between our 3 DC clusters. And I'll show you what I mean. That'll make more sense here. Now in the next space, we're working in spaces here now instead of the tops of the stitches. We're going to be working into this space here. We're going to yarn over and do our double crochet like normal. And we're going to create a corner here. So we're going to create 3 DCs. Our corner is a chain 2. And another 3 DCs back into that same space. So now we have just created our first corner. And now for the chain 1 between our 3D clusters, and we're going to create another corner, which is a 3 DC, a chain 2, and a 3 DC. So we've created our first side, we're working on our second. Excuse me, this would have been our first side, our second side, and now our third side. A chain 1 for our space, and make another corner. I hope this is making sense. I feel like there are so many videos for granny squares out there. It's a little bit redundant, but you know, everybody does them differently, and I feel like it's a good way to find out what works best for you. So we're done with our corner. We're going to do a chain 1 for our space, and then we're going to work our last corner. However, on this one, we've already worked that first DC when we turned. So we're going to work a 3 DC, a chain 2, and then 2 more DCs so that we can join with that first. And to join with the first, we find the single crochet and then the chain 1, grab the chain 1 and go through the space and slip stitch. Now we have finished round 2. All right, moving on to round 3. We are going to be working into this next space here. We're going to make our first double crochet like we have in the past with our single crochet and chain 1. And now we're going to turn. And now that counts as our first DC, but we need to do 1 more chain for our chain 1 between the clusters. And now we're going to work into our corner. And our corner is, again, 3 DCs, a chain 2, and 3 DCs. So we have our first DC made, chain 1, and a corner. Now we're going to chain 1 again and work into the next space. And we're going to put 3 DCs in each of the side spaces and do a chain 1. And now we're back to a corner. So our corners get 3 DCs, a chain 2, and 3 DCs. And as you can see, it follows this same fashion all the way around until the very, very last round when you are ready to fasten off. I'm going to make a few more rounds with you though, so that we can walk through each step together, especially if you're new at making granny squares or if you're new to this technique of granny squaring. Yes, granny squaring was just turned into a verb. Our next corner here gets a 3DC, a chain 2, a chain 2, and then a 3DC. So we're just working all the way around. If you are familiar with granny squares and you learned in the past and it's different technique than this, I would love to hear about it. I would love to hear how everyone does a granny square. And I love that there's so many different techniques, but in the end, we all get a beautiful end result. Coming up on my last corner here, or excuse me, I've just worked my last corner. Coming up on my last side space. And as you can see, we've already worked the first. So we need to just do our chain 1 and do 2 more double crochets to finish off this 3DC cluster. Now we're going to grab our chain 1 and go into the space and slip stitch. Now we have finished round 3. And we can continue on in the same fashion. So we're going to make our first double crochet, which is a single and a chain, turn our work, chain 1, and place a 3DC cluster and a chain 1. And now we work our corner. Some people like to do a chain 3 in the corners. If you're fine, because everybody's tension is different, right? It's a personal preference whether you do a chain 2 or a chain 3. If you're finding that you're working along and your corners start to bow in and it it starts to curl up on you, it's probably because your chains are tighter than mine and you might want to try a chain 3 in the corner. There's also granny squares that do not have the chain 1 in between the 3D cluster. It just creates a more dense fabric, and the spaces, the gaps in between each one of the clusters are going to be slightly smaller. It's all about personal preference, again, of what you want your end product to look like. That's what mine looks like so far. And continue around. And I'm going to work as many rounds as I can from my skein of Scheepjes Stonewashed. And I feel like one skein of this is a perfect amount for the belly portion of the blanket. And when I'm finished, we'll figure out how many rounds we get out of one skein. And you know what? If you don't get as many as me, or if you get more than I do, that's great. This isn't, we don't have to be exact. The beautiful thing about crochet is we're taught the basics and then we adapt and make them work for us. I feel like a broken record when I say that, but it is so true. As long as you are finding joy in your craft, there are no rules. There are only basics that you then adapt. Coming up on my last corner here, got my chain 2 in my second 3DC cluster. And do my chain 1 and finish my last cluster here. Started it, now I'm going to finish it with 2 DCs. Find that chain 1 after the single and then go through the space as well for a slip stitch. And carry on, my wayward son. We will work on in the same fashion. And then I will meet you up here when I am done with this skein and we're ready to attach our new color and continue on. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop here because I don't think I will have enough to make another round. So I've slip stitched into the top of my last stitch, and I don't think I'm going to have enough to do another one. So I'm going to stop there. And so far I have, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 rows with the one skein of Moonstone. So I've slip stitched into the top. I'm going to yarn over and fasten off. I'm going to break my yarn. You can use scissors, obviously, and pull that through. So we have a nice, let's see if I can, a nice sized square here, and that will be the center of our bunny belly. Okay, so now we need to add the smoky quartz. Before we add our next color, I'm going to just weave in this end here, and you'll also notice I had a knot in my skein, which is unfortunate, but it does happen. I'm going to pull, I'm going to consider this the front because my yarn tail from the first round is on the back side. So I'm just going to pull those yarn tails to the back, and I'm going to sew in all of my ends, especially this one, so that we can work over it and we don't have to worry about it when we're done. So I'm going to pull the yarn tail. Oops, this is the wrong side. There we go. We're on the right side of our work now. I'm just going to pull the yarn tail through that next stitch and pull it to the back, because instead of sewing, I'm going to just weave in my yarn tail with my hook. If you're using stonewashed, this is a great technique. If you're using any sort of slippery yarn, this will not work. You go through the back loop and you just whip it through. Okay. I started doing this. My friend's grandma taught me how to do this when I was using wool for a blanket. I was doing like a starburst granny square when I first started learning, and I was complaining about my ends, and she's like, stop complaining, use your hook, use your tools. So again, through the back loops, you can start over as however far over as you want. You can do it one by one. I'm impatient, so I'm just going to go through the back loops and just swoop around and grab all those loops you're going to pull through. Okay, and you can do it as far as you want. I usually go to the end. Like I said though, if you're using a slippery yarn, you're going to want to stop and sew in those ends with a darning needle. Okay, so I have that top end sewn in. Yep, I said it. It's sewn in, and this is our right side, so we're going to turn our work because we've been turning after every round. And we're going to grab our smoky quartz, and we're going to put a slip knot on our hook. If you prefer to tie your yarn to your project and then start working, that's fine too. This is just how I have adapted to make things work for me. Okay, so I have my slip knot on my hook. I am going to go into the corner here. You can do any space. You can join in any space. We are literally just continuing on with the pattern by just adding a new color. You can also do this if your yarn breaks and you want to add the same color. Okay, so we are going to have our slip knot on our hook, and we're going to insert our hook into the space. Hold on to your slip knot here, because we're going to yarn over and pull through and work that like a single crochet. I'll do that one more time. Slip knot is on your hook. Put your finger here, hold your tension. Go into the space, yarn over, and pull up your loop, and then single crochet like normal. It's basically called a standing single crochet, and we're going to place our chain 1 for our first double. So we have our single crochet and our chain 1, just like we do at the beginning of every round. So now we're also going to place our corner here. So we have our DC, our single crochet and our chain 1, and now we have our chain 2 for our corner. And then we'll finish our corner with a 3 DC. I'm crocheting over my ends here so it makes it easier to sew in. Okay, so I have our first DC, our corner, and our 3 DC cluster. Now we're just going to chain 1 and continue on crocheting our granny square like we had been for the last 14 rounds. Each space, each chain 1 space gets a 3 DC cluster and a chain 1, and each corner gets a 3 DC, a chain 2, and another 3 DC. And then I will meet you back up here at our first stitch of this round so that we can continue on, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, I'm coming up on my corner here. I'm going to chain 1 before like normal, and now I'm just going to place my last 2 double crochet, and I'm ready to join like we have been. Grab your chain and the space and slip stitch to join. Now we're ready to work our first double crochet of the next round before we turn. Okay, we need to chain 1 to go into the next space for our 3 DCs. And continue on like normal. I'm going to go until I run out of yarn on this skein of smoky quartz, and we'll see how far it gets me. I might add more, just depending. We will see. Continue working, and when you are finished adding length to your blanket, I will meet you back here for the last bit. Also keep in mind, again, I am using a sport weight yarn. You might want to take a measurement of your blanket before we move on so it doesn't get too big on you. I have also had people make almost full-size like car seat blankets or crib blankets, bassinet blankets. The sky's the limit, right? You can do whatever you want. You can even put it on a full-size blanket if you wanted to. Oops. So carry on. Happy crocheting. I will meet you back here when we are finished with our blanket. Okay, so I have finished my blanket. I'm happy with the size. I actually did end up using some more of a different skein. So I think I needed like 2 more rows. So I did end up adding some more. So I'm just going to quickly measure this. Obviously, I am using sport weight yarn. You can make your blanket, again, as big as you want. This is about 16 inches or approximately 40 centimeters. So if you are looking to have yours about the same size as mine, there's that. Okay, so we are done with our blanket. Now we need to add a border so that we can attach our carrot, because if I don't have to sew it, I'm not going to. So let's just bring this down a little bit, pardon the noise. Grab your carrot so that we are ready to attach when it comes time. And the border is very simple. I do very simple border around so that it doesn't take away from the blanket. And it also helps when we go to attach our carrot, or, you know, on my other Loveys, I usually have something cute hanging from one of the corners. Okay, so our border round, again, this is going to come down to tension, whether or not you do 2 or 3 chains. I'm only going to do 2, but if you're finding that this border starts puckering your stitches and it starts bunching them up, you need to switch to 3 chains, okay? So I'm going to place 1 single crochet in the next stitch. Now I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to place 2 single crochets in the next space. Ooh, I said stitch right here. I meant space. Don't work into the top of the stitch, work into the space. A chain 2 or 3, and then 2 single crochets. I'm going to do another chain 2 and 2 singles. Now this is the border. That's basically what it is. But before we move on, I'm going to attach our carrot to this corner here. So I'm going to chain 2. I'm going to single crochet 2. I'm going to grab my carrot and my smaller hook. This just makes it easier for us to insert the yarn through the carrot here. So I'm going to get my smaller hook on the needle, or excuse me, on the yarn there. Wow, words. I have the yarn on the smaller hook. Okay, now I'm going to be working, this is not, again, does not have to be perfect. We're just going to find a stitch that works for us and we're going to work through it. I'm going to separate these two because there's 6 on each side. So I'm just going to work through that top stitch there and put my hook through all the way to the back side. So it kind of looks like that. I'm going to make sure my working loop has some resistance on it, some tension, and I'm going to slip stitch very tightly, like not so tight that it distorts the carrot, but I'm just going to make sure that there's no loosey-gooseys is what I mean. We're going to do 1, and we're going to go back in and do 1 more just for, because I'm overkill, really, and I don't want it to come undone. So I've done 1 slip stitch, oh come on, and 2 through that 1 spot. That's what it looks like on the back. Okay. Now I'm going to kind of separate this and find my middle ground here and grab my other hook. I promise this is the fiddliest bit. Come around, tuck everything behind here so that our working loop is ready to go when we insert our hook for our next 2 singles. Okay, now let's take a look at that. We have our border round. We have 2 singles. We have 2 slip stitches. So sorry. 2 singles, 2 slip stitches. This is going to be the opposite side. This is going to be the back side. Here's the front side, our 2 slip stitches. If you don't like the way that looks and you would prefer to sew it on with green yarn, that's your prerogative, Bobby Brown. Okay. Now we're going to continue on with our border. We're going to chain 2 or 3 and place 2 singles in the space. And this will just flop around here. That's fine. I'm a desk or a surface crocheter. A lot of people are like, you know, they like to sit in front of the TV and crochet or have it in their lap while they're crocheting. I'm full on desk crocheter. So if you are the same, you can just lay it flat so that it's not, you know, flopping in the wind there. Oh my goodness. Okay. Continue on with the border, 2 singles and your chains until we come up to that very first single crochet made. And I'll show you how to join. I forgot to mention the fact that when we work our corners that don't have the carrot, we're going to place our 2 singles, a chain 2, just like our regular corner, and 2 more singles. So your corner is basically worked like the other corners, but instead of doubles, we're doing 2 singles, chain 2, 2 singles. Okay? And then we'll carry on. Also, I know I keep saying I'm going to leave you to it, but I keep thinking of things that I want to tell you. I have been told in the past with these border rounds that some people, you know, have really, really loose tension. And so their chains, oh, I didn't like that. Their chains then show that loose tension. If you are one of those people that just cannot get your chains to cooperate with you, go ahead. You can just single crochet in the top of each, including 1 stitch in the space. So it'd be 3 singles and then 1 stitch in the space, 3 singles, 1 stitch in the space, and you'd work the corners exactly the same. So if you are worried about your chain stitches on a raw edge right there, that is another option for you. Or you can leave off that border round completely and add your carrot to the last round of your granny square. It's all personal preference, and the beautiful thing about these things is we can customize them to meet our needs. So, okay, I think that this really is the last time before we meet up at the end when we join. Okay, toodaloo. Okay, as you can see, I have come up on my last stitch here. I have just one more 2 single cluster and then a chain 2 before I get to that first one made. I'm just going to put one more single crochet in there right next to that one. Yes, it's tight. Yes, it's going to be weird at first, but then when you slip stitch into the top of that single, help if I showed you, it all works out, huh? So now I'm just going to yarn over and fasten off. If you have a different method, then you can use that and pull through. And then I will sew in this end, and we are ready to sew our Lovey together. Just want to show you something. Mine is puckering a little bit here. Mine is puckering just a tiny bit. Like I told you, it might if your chains are too tight. However, it's not curling enough where I need to change my chain 2 to a chain 3. I just need to give her a little tug. If you give her a little tug, you tell her she's pretty, she will cooperate. We talk about this all the time. You tell her she's pretty and that we love her, and she will work better for us. These are tricks of the trade that you didn't know you needed, but I'm here for you. Okay, sew in this end, and then we will continue on. Okay, get all of your pieces ready to go, because now we are moving on to the next video, which actually inspired this one, which is the sewing tutorial. So make sure you have all of your pieces ready to go. You are going to need, you're going to need your sewing pins. So make sure you have your sewing pins. You're going to need your Susan Bates, and I will go over that with you in that video as well. When you are attaching your blanket to your bunny, make sure you have the right side that you would like facing outward when you sew on the bunny. So what that means is you will be sewing to this side of the blanket. But again, I will explain all of that to you in that next video. So thanks for joining in, and I can't wait to see all of your wonderful bunny lovies.